And good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Hoops HD. This is our weekly bracket rundown show. I'm,
Bracket.
I'm your host, Chad
Woohoo!
Sherwood, joined by David Griggs on one side over there, making lots of noise. Matt Zukowski's on my
Yeah.
other side. Down the second row, we've got John Titel and John Stalika joining us. This is our bracket rundown show where we're going to go ahead and build a 1 through 68 seed list on the air, discuss the teams, discuss where they are slotted as of right now. But before we get to that, actually, starting Sunday, we're going to be getting our championship week video notebooks. And David, we have a new feature that we're going to start that we announced last night during Under the Radar for championship week video notebook.
Yeah, essentially we're going to be taking questions from the viewers and listeners. So like you can email us, you can tweet at us, like if you just have any questions, and we're going to be answering them during the show. Like just 3 or 4 questions or however many. Like we'll probably get about 1,000 questions, and out of those we'll pick 3 or 4 and answer.
So feel free to send your questions. And I didn't tell any of you this before we went on because it's kind of funnier when I surprise you guys with things. But we actually already had a couple questions after we announced it yesterday.
Oh, really?
One of them actually came a couple days ago, actually, from our coveted boards where we had a question. John Titel, we had a question for you from Henry. I believe he's from Ohio. And he was discussing, so Titel, he was asking about the brackets you do every Sunday, and he was asking if you were predicting where we're going to be on Selection Sunday when you do those, or where they are as if the seed list was there today. And he was specifically noting that Gonzaga, you had them at the top of your seed list, which is the week before the real committee had them down at number 4.
I guess I just have a crystal ball then. No, I'm trying to predict March. That being said, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know if Gonzaga is going to win out or not. I think they will, which is why I have them so high, but that's kind of what I do.
Okay, so you are actually, when you do those seed lists, you are kind of, in a way, predicting out what's going to happen the rest of the year as well, then.
I'm doing my best, Coach.
Okay. All right. We also have one more here. Dave, this one came in for you.
Yeah.
Mr. Griggs, you are hereby summoned to appear before this court on the 27th day of February 2017 to answer to the 3 counts of drunken disorderly conduct.
It wasn't disorderly.
Not the sir about this.
It was not disorderly. What's that got to do with bracketology? What's that got to do with anything?
I'm reading the questions. This is what my job is, damn it. Let's go ahead here, though, and let's go ahead and
drink too much. I can quit whenever I want to. It's not a problem, all right?
This is the board we're going to be using tonight. It's our 1 through 68 seed list.
I got to minimize that on my screen.
Are you okay there, David?
Well, yeah. Just see, when you first pull it up, it takes over the whole screen.
No wonder you're headed for a hearing.
Yeah. Okay.
The way we work this show, though, is I'm going to go to each one of our panelists here and ask you to give me your 4 teams on a seed line. We're then going to go to everybody to kind of debate them. I have the power to veto one of those teams off the line and replace it with somebody else. And
No, we're doing it differently tonight.
Oh,
I am going to release the seed list 1 through 68, and then you get, as normal, 1 veto.
David,
for 2 teams.
David, I think my veto is going to be against you. I think I'm just going to veto you right off the show. I think that's. Let's go ahead and start things up here, actually. And Matt, let me start with you here for the 1 line. Who are the 4 1 seeds as you see them right now? And here we are, actually, February 23rd, 9:30 p.m. So games that started later on this evening are not going to be factored in this, including the USC Arizona, UCLA Arizona State, Wisconsin Ohio State. Those won't be factored in.
I will agree with the esteemed Mr. Titel. I have Gonzaga number 1 overall.
Yep.
I still have Villanova number 2 overall. I have Kansas 3rd and North Carolina 4th.
All right. Well, let me turn to the esteemed Mr. Titel. What do you think of Matt's 1 line there?
My dad is the esteemed Mr. Titel, but I still appreciate it. I love it. I think that Baylor's been there all season, and they were this close, but they did lose, and Carolina can't lose, so I have no veto.
You would not veto. Okay. Well, Stalika, how about you? Do you agree as well?
I think I'd have a slight disagreement about Gonzaga and Villanova in that order. I'd flip those 2, but I have no problem with Kansas and North Carolina where they are.
So you think despite Villanova getting swept now by Butler, you would still have them over an undefeated team?
For the time being.
And how much longer are we going to go? You know, we are just a couple weeks away from Selection Sunday. All right, David, I'll give you a chance to add your 2 cents in here.
Well, I know you don't like Gonzaga as the overall number one, at least I don't think, because they don't have quite as much on their paper. But I think that they've certainly, when a team doesn't lose a game, they've certainly passed all the tests that's been put before them. And I think they literally are the best team in the country, even though another team might have 10 top 50 wins as opposed to 4. I would actually flip-flop Kansas and Villanova. Kansas has the win at Baylor was really, really good, and I know Villanova's profile is amazing. I don't think they have a singular win that good, and then past that singular win, I think it's pretty comparable. I also had North Carolina as the 4th number one. I think they're going to end up there, but I don't think they'll stay there if they don't get at least one monster road win. Typically, a number 1 seed beats a protected seed in a true road game. North Carolina hasn't done that yet, but they will have opportunities. And I think they're good enough to take advantage of them when they come. So,
yeah. I was going to say, if we're going to argue order here, I think there's an argument here that this Kansas team maybe should be number 1 overall over both Gonzaga and Villanova. I understand the Villanova not being 1 after, among other things, being swept by Butler, but nobody has a win as good as winning at Baylor. And, oh, by the way, they also won at Kentucky. They beat Duke on a neutral court, and they won at Iowa State. And really only one blip, and it was back on November 11th.
Yeah, I mean, I think an argument could be made. I disagree. I think Gonzaga is better. Okay. If you want to say whose paper is better, it's no question. But I think Gonzaga's team is better, and that's why I kind of have to use reasonable supposition here. I think Gonzaga's paper not being as good is a circumstantial thing, not them not being as good thing.
And if you look here, we do have some of these various metrics up here, the RPI, the KenPom, strength of schedules, and our colleague Joby, who can't be with us tonight, his nitty-gritty rankings. You see there, Gonzaga 1 in the KenPom, Kansas 1 in the RPI, Villanova 1 in the Joby. So it is kind of all over the place there, and I think there is a good debate here over the order of these teams, but it doesn't sound like we're getting any debate over who the 4 teams are. So for that reason, I am going to go ahead and leave this line alone. And let's go ahead and go to the 2 line here. And Tytel, let me bring you back here. And who would be your 2 seeds? And maybe we're going to get a little more debate about teams now when we get to this line.
So I mentioned Baylor had been 1 all season. Losing to Kansas is nothing to lose sleep over. So I would like to put them in this 2 line. I think we need to get a couple Pac-12 teams here. The Ducks were this close to dropping, but thanks to Dylan Brooks, who's playing like an All-American, keep them at the number 2 line. We'll see if UCLA can beat my Wildcats, but for now, somebody decided to rank Arizona 4th in the nation. I assure you we're not the 4th best team in the nation, but I think we're good enough for a 2 seed. And for the 4th, Florida's been playing great for, it seems like 2 months now. I still think Louisville, even after losing the other night, is a little above them, but I could easily another coin flip. So my 4 are Baylor, Louisville, Oregon, Arizona, but I would not lose sleep if somebody wants to put Florida up here.
And Florida is the other team that I'm going to throw over there in the bottom right corner here under consideration. Salika, what do you think about these 4 teams here?
Well, I was also going to add, one little caveat as far as who gets the number 1 overall. It's going to mean 2 things this year. Number 1, you actually get to choose a preferred site. And number 2, you would not have to play number 5 overall. So, for example, you probably would not have, let's say, the Pac-12 leader in the number 5 seed so we can get region balance.
Well, I don't think it matters that I don't think you take the Pac-12 leader out of the 5th spot. You just depends on which region you send them to. That's all it's going to matter.
Yeah.
Now, as far as the original question goes, I would also agree with the 4 teams that John T. had mentioned, although I would have Arizona 6, Oregon 7, and Louisville 8. So just flip the Pac-12 schools here.
Yeah, I understand that debate there on the order of the schools, and it is kind of important here. Actually, it's very important when it comes to the Pac-12 schools, because as you kind of mentioned there, only one of these teams will get to play in the West region. And there's a third one there, UCLA, that we haven't even mentioned yet. But Matt, do you agree with the 4 teams as well? And do you want to make the case of Arizona over Oregon there on the 2 line?
I actually have Oregon over Arizona fairly. Like, I am the one person here who's not nearly as high in Arizona as everyone else. Like, I will say this is a tough spot to fill, and I probably should have given Florida more consideration. I actually still had Duke here as my number 8, but, like, honestly, I probably like Florida better if I think about it a little bit more.
All right. Well, here's, first of all, you mentioned that Arizona team. Here's that Arizona profile. And Taitel, let me get back to you for a second. What Arizona has done is they've won at Cal, at USC, at UCLA. Their losses, Butler and Gonzaga, nothing to sneeze at. And at Oregon, nothing is not bad. I really think the only bad thing when I look at this Arizona profile is the score of 1 game, which was a very bad one.
It is. And if Matt wants to rest his argument on that, I think that's a good resting place because and the game wasn't that close. Like, we were down 38-11, and I thought it was going to get worse. Somehow the Ducks let up on us. I mean, that showed, I think, almost more about Oregon. Like, I don't think we played badly. They just could not miss from three-point land, which they did in the first half against Cal last night, and it almost cost them. But, yeah, when your 3 losses are to a 1 seed, a 2 seed, and a team that swept a 1 seed, I think that's a solid 2 seed resume, but that's just me.
Right. Well, I guess the question is more of, don't they belong above, maybe they belong above Oregon, who only has 2 top 50 road wins away from home, as opposed to Arizona has 4 of them. If we flip back and forth between these 2.
Fair question. I'd say wait till Saturday night, and Arizona's either going to go up or down.
All right. David,
I guess I'll also go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Salika, before I go over to David.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the reasons I actually have Arizona over Oregon is because the Wildcats are 11-3 away from home, and Oregon is 8-4. Arizona did make up for the Oregon loss by actually winning at UCLA, which is something the Ducks were not able to claim.
Well, David, let me get your thoughts on this line here, and again, the Oregon-Arizona debate as well here.
Well, I don't have Louisville quite this high. I have them close to this high, but when they have some good wins, Kentucky, Duke, Purdue, Virginia Tech, but it's just when you look at what they've done away from home, there's Wichita State, who I believe to be solidly in the field, but I don't think it's the same class as, say, winning at Kentucky. And then, like, their best probably road win is against these fringe bubble teams, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, although Syracuse might be a little better than fringe now, Georgia Tech, who is solidly in, we all know that. But, to me, the tipping point with UCLA is they've won more road games, and their best win is better than Louisville's best win, and that's the win at Kentucky.
So you would
I know Louisville also beat Kentucky, but they didn't do it in Rupp Arena.
So you would go over this Louisville profile that I just put up on the screen there, and there it is, the lack of the road wins
Yes.
in the top 50. You'd go with not Florida, but you'd go UCLA here.
Yes.
And make this.
And again, Florida doesn't have them either.
Well, I'll pull up the UCLA profile here as well, because I think it's an interesting debate here, Louisville versus UCLA. David, I didn't get your thoughts there on Oregon, Arizona. Who's the better of those 2?
Arizona, but I have them right next to each other.
Okay. UCLA did win at Kentucky, obviously. That is something that Louisville does not have.
Yeah. They got more than that. I mean, if you go down a little bit, I mean, they've beaten this is UCLA we're looking at.
This is UCLA right here, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they've beaten some of the they've even teams that from 51 to 100, they've done a little more on the road. Well, at Utah.
They beat Tim Miles in a neutral court, yes.
Well, and, of course. Did Louisville beat Tim Miles?
Taitel, do you buy that maybe UCLA should be above Louisville here?
I don't, but again, if you ask me Saturday night, depending on how things go, I mean, it's just a game, but it's a ginormous game that I think is one of those games that can affect a team. I mean, if UCLA loses in Tucson, they're not going to drop. If they beat the Cats in Tucson, I think that can go up an entire seed line. That's a huge win.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Matt, you had one more comment on the issue?
Yeah, all right. I was going to say, thinking about it a second, I will defend Duke in that maybe not the 2 line, but if we're talking wins away from home, they've won at Notre Dame, at Virginia, and beat Florida on a neutral.
I also had Duke ahead of Louisville.
I can't go with this. Go with the argument that Duke belongs here. I just can't go with you there, Matt. I'm going to go ahead and actually almost leave this line alone. I know, Tytel, you're not going to like it, but I'm going to flip-flop Arizona and Oregon just in the list here. I think Arizona right now does deserve that 1 seed in the West because it was just one game that kills them, and Oregon had that loss to Colorado, that's so much to be a disqualifier. But David, I kind of dread doing it, but I want to go ahead and let you take the 3 line.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've already messed up the 3 line, but I have UCLA, Duke, Butler, and I realize that we're bringing them out early, but I do have them this high, and then next is West Virginia, but there's another team I really like almost as much that if somebody else wants to argue them, I'll probably agree with a lot of the arguments, but those are the next 4 that I had.
So you're not even considering Florida at this point, David?
No.
Okay.
And again, if you pull it up, it's just
I will.
one of the – I mean, if you pull up Florida real quick, I can pinpoint. I just don't think they've done nearly as much away from home. I mean, when comparing – they won at Arkansas. That's a good win. Butler won at Villanova. That is infinitely better.
Well, again, they won at Arkansas. They have a neutral court floor wins over Miami, Seton Hall.
Yeah.
They won at Alabama, and who has at least been in the bubble talk until they kind of laid an egg tonight.
Okay, comparing that to everybody else on this line, I just don't think it compares.
Okay. Here's that Florida again. I was just clearing out some of the other teams. But, Matt, I want to go to you first because I know you want to defend Florida here and argue where David is completely wrong.
Yeah, I would prefer Florida to West Virginia.
And that's actually the team. David, you were not going to have to sell me much on Butler here. With the sweep of Villanova, I think that's a real good case. But Tytel, what are your thoughts on this debate here? Does Florida belong here over one of these teams, such as West Virginia?
They do. I mean, it's kind of – there's not a lot of wins, but I think all the losses are good losses. They were this close to beating Gonzaga. Not many teams have been this close to beating Gonzaga this year. I don't think that I would lose sleep if they were a 4 seed. I said they were a possible 2. I have no problem with Florida at a 3.
Let me ask you that. Okay, let's pull up another team. Let's pull up Purdue. Can we do that, Chan?
Sure. We can do anything here.
Yeah, I mean, we can do – okay, and again, Florida has an inflated RPI, but those were in front of technically neutral but practically home crowds. You just mentioned their resume. Look at Purdue's. Notre Dame, neutral core, Wisconsin, at Michigan State, at Maryland. I when you read off the top of their profile beats Florida, and they really haven't done anything disgusting except like the loss at Iowa.
And the loss at Nebraska.
Well, that's a fantastic loss. I mean –
all right, David. You see, you're not doing yourself any favors here by not counting by making an argument when one of the losses is to Nebraska. But Stalika, I haven't got your thoughts yet on this line. Let me put it back on the screen so you can see it.
I actually agree with the Puppets 4 teams here, but I'd argue that Butler should actually be at the top of this line. I mean, it's hard to ignore 10 wins against teams that are possibly going to make the NCAA tournament field, but the reason why they can't really go higher is because 4 of those losses are going to be against teams that are currently on the outside, including St. John's and Indiana State. I mean, you can't just ignore those 2 wins they have against Villanova either.
You can't. I do like the arguments, though. At the UCLA, I think was a real good argument to be on the 3 line. Even though Duke lost to Syracuse, I think that they've been playing excellent lately. So I'm kind of okay with the first 3 of David's picks. I am going to veto West Virginia off the line and replace them with the Gators.
You can veto them for Purdue. That's acceptable. You can't put Florida there when their best win is Arkansas. You've broken the bracket, Jay. You have broken the bracket.
Well, then I'm going to turn to Stalika to fix it. John S., why don't you give me your 4 line here?
I think it goes without saying that I would include West Virginia in here to appease the puppet, and I feel dirty saying that.
Mhm.
So the next thing I'm going to be adding is Florida State, Kentucky, and Boiler Up.
Florida State, Kentucky, and Purdue. I think that sounds pretty solid, but I want to get some opinions here, obviously. And Titel, let me start with you. What do you think of his picks?
No veto, but I do want to throw Cincinnati under consideration just so John S. can see what he's missing out on.
Oh, just so you can see what you're missing out on. Cincinnati,
As if I didn't already know.
who pounded Memphis tonight. The RPI number is there to be in this top 4 seed line, but I think when we look at the resume, we're going to see it's lacking something that a lot of the other teams have. If that's going to come up here in a minute. Actually, while it's loading, though, Matt, let me get your thoughts on this line.
These are the teams. I think I might have had Kentucky a line higher, but I didn't argue with that strenuously. But otherwise, I have these 16 teams as the protected seeds.
Okay,
And
so
what is a protected seed? Can we?
well, David, why don't you tell
forgot
us?
to answer that. Well, it's a top 16 team. Basically, the rules are they're protected from home court advantage in the round of 64. So West Virginia, if they were a 3 seed and IUPUI was a 14 seed, they would not send West Virginia to Indianapolis. More of a practical standpoint, you are playing a team that's most likely outside the bubble in the round of 64, which is more of protection than just not having to go to another city.
Right. These 1 through 4 seeds will be playing teams on the 13 through 16 lines, which you're not going to really discuss much tonight. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting Cincinnati's profile up here. I'm going to try to keep working on that, though. But I don't think I heard any movement for any vetoes here, unless David, did I get your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, I like the teams. I would have Purdue slightly higher, but I like the teams on this line.
Okay, well then on that note, I'm going to turn back to you, Matt, for the next 4 teams while I try to figure out why I can't get the profiles to load.
All right, so I have Wisconsin. Still have Virginia. We've digged them some, but I think this is about where the fall needs to end. I have I have Cincinnati. And I will throw out Notre Dame here and probably have everyone else try to veto them, but I like the Irish here.
All right, so it's Wisconsin, Virginia, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. Stalika, since you love Cincinnati, do you think that this is where they belong?
Well, to John T's point, I would actually have had Cincinnati at the top of my 5 line. And
You fixed it! Way to go.
I guess the other point is I would have
Okay.
then had Wisconsin, and I would have had Notre Dame above Virginia right now.
Ooh,
David, I think it sounds like you have a comment.
Well, I have a team that, again, when you put them side by side with Wisconsin, I just don't think we're used to looking at them as being up this high. But why shouldn't Minnesota be up this high if Wisconsin should be? Who's down 12 to Ohio State at the moment in a game we're not considering, but just throwing it out there for your consideration.
Okay, so you would actually have Minnesota here above who?
Whiskey, really, I have them at 17. They're at the top of my line. And if we can pull up, are we able to pull up profiles again?
We are.
We can do anything.
Yeah, we can.
Unquote.
Okay, we are working on that for a second here. But
What happened?
we had a minor hiccup there. We may have cut off a little bit of the show, but again, we're going to leave the 5 line alone: Wisconsin, Virginia, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, and
Did
go
you
ahead.
get my? I mean, if you cut out part of the show to cut out my brilliant argument for Minnesota,
Well, David, I'll tell you
just
what I
so
will
you
do,
wouldn't have to
because
veto
we
it.
did not do this in the part of the show that got cut out. It is. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Minnesota profile now that we can show them, and you know, you really think that this team is better than any of these 5 seeds, despite having those 6 losses?
I mean, on paper, I think
Sorry,
the top of it is.
7 losses. Well, the
Yeah.
top of it at Purdue, I like, but Arlington,
And at
Vanderbilt,
Northwestern,
Michigan. We haven't put Northwestern in the field yet, have we?
No, but it was still a nice road win. Okay. Well, I mean, the part that cut out was brilliant. I mean, sorry that our audience didn't get to hear it. Chad.
Let me go ahead and Titel, let me go to you for the 6 line.
Thank you. I want to get Creighton in here. The stat is that with Mo Watson, they're 18-1 with their only loss to Villanova. Without him, they are 4-5, and 2 of the 4 wins are DePaul sweep. So I think this is one of those you judge them on their performance when healthy, or you take into account when they're not healthy. So Creighton.
DePaul sweep plus Georgetown in there too, who is playing pathetic right now.
Oh, I went to the game last night. If you want to spend 5 minutes on that later, just let me know.
I think it's also noteworthy to note that if Watson were healthy, he would actually be suspended right now by the university.
Yeah, okay, but Titel, go ahead. We got Creighton. Give me 3 more.
Sure, that is a good point, Dennis, except I think that they would still count that as like playing without him, but I still like that point. My other 3 for this line, even though let's get Minnesota in here. They look really good. I had a friend who went to the game, and she was a Maryland alum, and she was devastated, so that's good enough for me. SMU can't seem to lose these days, so let's get SMU in there. And then as far as somebody with Mary in their title, I could go Maryland. I could go St. Mary's. Based on recency bias, let's go St. Mary's.
Go St. Mary's up here. Not going Maryland. Not going one other team that I think could get some consideration here. But let me, Salika, let me go to you here for your comments on his teams. And do you want to make a change or argue that I should make a change?
I would agree with them as far as Creighton, Southern Methodist, and I could also go with Minnesota. But another Big 12 team I would add here that's been quietly red hot, not Oklahoma State, but I'm going to go with the Iowa State Cyclones as my other number 6.
And I give you credit, Salika. You actually nailed the team that I was thinking of here that could be a surprise team on the 6th line.
You skipped over the team I was thinking of.
Well, you don't really count. So, Matt, I'm going to go to you next.
What do you mean I don't?
Here's the Iowa State profile, though. Just
Kangaroo
throwing it up here. Obviously, the huge win at Kansas. Also win at Oklahoma State. Swept Kansas State. Swept Texas Tech. The losses, although they have 2 sub-100 losses, they are 2 power schools, Iowa and Texas, both on the road. But, Matt, your thoughts on Titel's line?
I actually agree with it. And here's a point I'm going to make about St. Mary's and I guess to a lesser extent SMU. To see, you say, what would these teams do if they're playing in bigger conferences? Look how Butler's done since they've joined the Big East. They've still been a top team in that conference. So, I think St. Mary's and SMU would both be doing just as well if they're another league. And the fact they haven't had a ton of chances to do it, but I think they would take advantage of them if they have the opportunity. So, I like SMU and St. Mary's up here on the 6th line.
Well, Matt, I'm going to take exception to that statement about Butler being there because, Butler's now been in the Big East for how many years?
Yeah, and then I also say,
you're not recruiting as a Big East school. You're no longer recruiting as a Horizon League school. I think there is a difference there. And I understand the argument for SMU, but I'm not saying that St. Mary's would be this high if they were playing in the Big East.
I think St. Mary's would be right in that scrub for 2nd or 3rd if they're in the Big East. I think they're just as good, if not better, than the school. I like the Marquette and Xavier range. I think they're a little better than that.
And it also helps that Butler has their coaching situation stabilized over the past few years, so it wasn't as volatile as when they were switching leagues on 2 different occasions.
Well, David, here is that St. Mary's profile. They beat Nevada. They won at Dayton, which is a very better win as we go forward. But that's
one at BYU, one at Stanford. I mean, there is some merit here. I like the St. Mary's team.
Okay.
I didn't have them quite this high. I did have SMU on this line, albeit at number 24 instead of number 23. But the team I like, and I realize that part of it is just they've got a huge head of steam built up, but Oklahoma State, their profile is really, really good. I like them both in Iowa State as well, but if we were going to put a team up here that isn't up here, I would start looking at Oklahoma State.
All right. Well, let me pull up the Oklahoma State profile. I do think that they are a team that is obviously they're not because the computer has rejected them, David. So, as a result of the computer's own statement, we are not going to actually exercise a veto on this line. I'm going to let it stand. But I will pull up Oklahoma State's profile so we can take a quick look at it. Again, a couple road wins here. Not as good as Iowa State's road win, though. West Virginia's nice, but it's not like winning at Fog.
It's not. But they also have the one sort of at Wichita State. And, at Texas Tech, who's a bit of a home court hero, at TCU, home court hero. I mean, they've won against the home court heroes, even if those aren't solid top 40 tournament teams. And some of them, at least one of them, might sneak into the field as is. But, I mean, they're both really good. I could see making a case for both of them. To be honest, I like them both better than St. Mary's.
All right. Well, again, I'm not going to actually exercise a veto here. I think the line is fairly solid. I think that, I may personally have disagreed a little bit, but not so much that's worth exercising a veto over. But, David, I'm going to begrudgingly allow you to take the 7 line.
Okay, we got SMU. I'm just polishing up my notes here. Well, two of the first two are the two that we've already mentioned, Oklahoma State and Iowa State. And I know that they play tonight, and if they win, they're probably going to be a little higher than this. I had USC all the way up here.
Whoa.
Okay, David, what do you say? I don't want to. We're gonna figure out what you're smoking pretty soon, but let's go ahead and get your fourth team here because we did put Maryland under consideration previously. I don't know if you want
Miami is the fourth team
over Maryland even.
Oh, Maryland's no. I missed that Maryland wasn't in yet. It would be Maryland and then USC.
Okay.
Actually, it would be Maryland, then Oklahoma State, then whatever.
Okay.
I missed that Maryland wasn't in. I failed to keep proper notes as we were progressing.
All right. That's at least a little bit saner, but this USC pick, Matt, you screamed, I screamed. I'll let you take the argument here as to this craziness of the USC at the 7 line.
You could be pulling a fast one on us, so just be warned.
I have them on the line that plays the 7th seed in the first round, but
I would agree with that.
yeah, no, they're not playing well now. Their profile is, two very nice home wins, SMU and UCLA, but away from home they've done nothing. They're not playing that well now. Of course, because they're like in the 60s of the Pomeroys, that's not going to make a case for me very well. And that, now I will say it is kind of tough to find a team here, but mine was Virginia Tech. They were my number 28.
Well, they're kind of a home court hero too, and USC has won away from home. They've won 6 games.
All right, David, you are big on road wins. They have no road wins against anybody that's going to be in this field unless somebody crazy wins an automatic bid. SMU and UCLA at home I agree with you, very nice wins, but
we're running. We're starting to kind of not. The pickings are getting a little slimmer.
Well, Stalika, let me get your thoughts on it here. And here's that Virginia Tech profile. Who look at that, a top 50 road win
at Michigan. Yeah, who is right, sort of in this neighborhood.
Yeah. But Stalika, your thoughts? Oh, by the way, also at Clemson, at Pittsburgh, 2 teams are going to be. At least one of them, I think we may mention, may or may not mention, but they are road wins there. But Stalika, your thoughts on his line?
If you heard what I said, I sort of agree about USC being up here, but it is not the USC on the West Coast. It is the USC on the Atlantic Coast.
South Carolina. Talk about teams in a free fall here. And Titel, I'm going to want your thoughts here on this line here, but I'm going to go ahead and pull up the South Carolina profile first so we can see as Angry Frank's team is doing the same exact thing I think that they did last year.
I was hoping somebody would start playing Free Falling by Tom Petty, but
yeah, the profile is loading up here. There it is. Okay. There is that 4 out of 5 losses there for South Carolina.
Their second best win of the season is 1 point on my birthday against Monmouth. That is not a 7th seed and above resume, my friends.
Well, who would you have on this 7 line? You're not going to go with David on USC, are you?
No, I'm not as drunk as David. I like Maryland. I actually was going to have Iowa State lower, but they're playing pretty well, and a win over Kansas is going to carry the day. Love Oklahoma State, as John S. has been pushing them for the past several weeks, and he is exactly right. instead of USC, let's
Yeah.
throw the bone. Let's get a little Xavier up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe he does have some lead in that place.
Xavier, now what Xavier does have is the RPI. Some of these metrics do like Xavier still. We got.
It's a beautiful, a nice place, nice people.
And
I
they
mean,
do
there's
have a road win over Creighton, David.
Yeah.
So why not this 4 losses in a row Xavier team?
The same reason it's like, boy, salt tastes good. Let me try to administer it through my eyeball. Just not a good idea.
Boy,
Yeah,
a healthy
4
roster
losses,
tastes good, but Edmund Sumner's not there and Miles Davis ain't there.
Right.
And it's
see, USC isn't looking so bad now, are they?
yeah, David, they are. I am going to exercise a veto here.
Well, wait. One more team, and you got to start looking at like the practical record. And this team has a practical record of, I think, 16-10 now. They have 3 1-point losses, another 2-point loss, and I mean they're on pace to catch Gino Auriemma, as we saw last night. That's the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
David,
This
there's
is
2
about where
miles
they
right
would
there. When our colleague Joby doesn't even give him a rating, they are vetoed.
I think he should.
Matt, I'm going to side with you here. Virginia Tech, I think, will be the team that we go with. I agree it's tough, but at least they have a top 50 win, and they're not in complete free fall right now. Top 50 road win and not in complete free fall. And that's about the best I can go with in making that selection. USC drops down to under consideration. And Salika, you're going to come up next with our 8 line.
This is where I would add Angry Frank's bunch even with the free fall. And this is where I'm also going to add Northwestern if we're also talking about other teams that somehow managed to win at Wisconsin during their absence of Lindsey. And then this is where I would add the Trojans of Southern Cal.
Okay.
And then I'll add another team that the puppet teased earlier, and that's the Miami Hurricanes.
And that I do kind of agree with is a decent pick on this line. You did leave your Xavier Musketeers out, though, even on this 8 line to go once again with USC. So, Titel, I got to go back to you. Do you put USC in here now, or is Salika smoking the same thing David is?
Nobody's smoking the same thing David is. I mean, what am I missing with Xavier's numbers? Like, this is an 8 seed, if not a 7 seed number, right? I understand that they've lost a lot, but they're missing 2 good players.
Are they getting those players back? I guess my thing with Xavier is I just have a hard time swallowing them. I mean, they're in my field, but I mean, it's just like, here's a spoon so you can dig your eyeballs out when you watch them play. I mean, it's just, they haven't just lost 4 games in a row. They've looked horrible.
So they're failing your eye test.
Yeah.
And David, you have very large eyes there on top of your head, too.
Yes,
so it's difficult to fail your eye. Pat,
no, I think they're safe as far as making the field. And yes, if you look at them categorically, the RPI is very high. Strength of schedule, incredibly high. Road win at Creighton, good. And they've, as much as they've lost, they haven't lost to anybody that really has you banging your head against the wall other than Colorado, but neither has Clemson. And at least Clemson's playing close games. Xavier hasn't really even been close in their last 4.
That's why.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, I don't even think I need to ask you this question, given that USC's Palmer rating is 62 and Xavier's is 38. But where do you fall on this argument?
I'm actually going to introduce another team, and that would be the Wolverines of Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Far down did I have them?
Michigan, a team that's actually playing really well right now, and a very high Ken Palm rating of 27. Let's go ahead and pull them up, though. And
man, they narrowly missed a real nice win and a very hot Minnesota team. I
have Xavier on the next line, by the way. But
I wasn't asking. I was asking Matt. Go ahead, Matt.
I was interrupting you to tell you that I had Xavier on the next line.
They have, like I said, those neutral court wins over SMU and Marquette that still are holding up pretty well, and now have picked up enough decent Big Ten wins that I think I like them right at this 8 range. I think they can't be any higher because they haven't done too much on the road, but I like them here as I think quality of team, decent enough profile, and please learn they're better than USC. I mean, not that that's a real high bar to climb here, but they're better than USC.
I hope our colleague Mike doesn't have compromising photos of Matt here. I mean, I like Michigan, but not that high.
I think that it's a very interesting argument here on Michigan, actually. David, did I ever get your final thoughts on this line here, other than you think USC should be here?
On the
On
eight
the eight
line?
line, yeah.
I have Wichita up this high, but again, I realize is North. Who else do we? But my next line would be USC, Miami, Wichita, and Northwestern.
Okay,
That
so you
would be
would
my
have
eight
South
line.
Carolina lower.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not going to agree with that. I'm also not going to agree with the USC pick still.
You can't veto a team twice.
I
You
am
can't
vetoing
veto a
USC
team
again.
twice.
I am vetoing them. I think it's a real interesting debate here, Michigan or Xavier. I think that when you look, if you're going to go by paper, you got to go Xavier because of the top 50 road win, and that's why I'm going to do it. I don't like doing it, but I did it. I still think it's a good team that just is in a really bad funk, and it's a shame to knock them too low over that. And hopefully they get out of it in the next couple of weeks here. Otherwise,
Note to self,
Yeah,
lobby
if they don't
Xavier
get
to
out of
wear
it the next
black or
couple
blue
weeks, they'll
on
be
Sunday.
out of it.
all right. Matt, I'm going to give you the 9 line here. We've had mentions of both Michigan and Wichita State, but
And I have
and USC, who we have not yet put in.
okay, yeah. I have Michigan and Wichita State on this line.
Okay.
I have Dated on this line, and this is gonna be homerish, but I actually have Marquette here at 36, and I did have him exactly at 36.
So you still wouldn't go USC?
No,
All right. USC seems to be the team for debate here tonight.
I just can't.
David, you can talk me
People
into
just
USC
don't
here.
understand greatness when they see it.
Go ahead, David. Talk me into USC here and which team I should bounce for them, because I think that Matt might be underselling them at this point.
Well, again, I mean, they have 8 wins away from home, and it's just, what are you? Their losses really aren't that terrible, and yeah, none of their wins really jump out at you. Like UCLA and SMU are pretty good wins, even though those were at home. Those are 2 teams that have played well on the road. I think it was hard to win those games. A&M, while not a tournament team, has still been pretty solid at home. And it's just, the thing about me is just the 8 wins away from home. Because my thing is, when your best wins are at home against teams that have losing records on the road, I just can't get behind that, because it's not as hard to win those games.
David, they actually have 9 wins away from home, so I'm going to make your argument better for you. But
Okay,
Tytel, what are your thoughts here? Do you think we need to get USC in here? And if so, who do we need to bounce out?
I do think we have to get him in here, albeit a little West Coast bias. Matt, having jinxed Marquette enough this year, I understand that I'm literally the one keeping them off the 9 line, but I've seen them 3 times in person. They've lost 3 times in person. I would bounce them.
Salika, your thoughts? Should we bounce Marquette for USC?
So what's John T's price going to be to come to Cincinnati next Wednesday for the Marquette game?
2 bowls of Skyline chili.
Ooh, nice.
Oh,
Skyline's
that can
pretty good.
easily be arranged.
Yeah.
But as far as the teams I would have had listed here, I would have agreed on USC, Wichita State. Dayton I would also agree on, and another one of Matt's favorite teams, and that would actually be VCU up here.
You have VCU over
Ooh.
Marquette and
Oh.
USC?
Wow.
Wow, okay.
No, I meant I would have a USC, Wichita, VCU, and Dayton.
So you wouldn't even have
Michigan.
You wouldn't have Michigan this high.
No,
Okay,
they would
well,
be my first 10.
I'm gonna veto that, but let's go ahead and pull up the VCU profile to take a look at them here. VCU, I'm not going to quite agree.
Well, yeah.
with that
You
this
see
slide.
how the screen was blank there? I mean, that was basically their profile.
Well, here it is. They've been Dayton at home. They've been Middle Tennessee at home. Matt, you've been anti-VCU for a while now, although I think you may have changed your tune a little bit this past week.
yeah, I have him in the field, but they have him at 41 right now, so this I think could be low.
That's exactly where I have them, I think. Yeah. Well, no,
Yeah,
I think I
this
have them at 40. But
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to go ahead and exercise a veto over Marquette. Put USC in finally. So
Does
the
Michigan
third straight line of veto has involved USC. So
does the fact that half of Michigan's road wins came against a school that's a state school that refuses to call its name by that state, does that trouble anyone?
David, you've been muted. Thank you.
Why have I been muted?
Oh, now you've been unmuted. I guess I can't even mute properly tonight, but I tried to mute you at least. But Titel, I'm going to let you take the 10 line here. We've had mentions of VCU and Marquette, neither of which got in.
I'm ready to put VCU in. I will throw them out a bone. Let's get Marquette in. Because they've beaten West Virginia and Baylor, I want to get Kansas State in.
Yeah, good pick.
Had Cal held off the Ducks, I would have put them in, but they did not, so I will not. As far as my coin flip, bring on the Arkansas haters. Let's go Razorbacks.
All right. I want to take issue with you first before I go to anybody else here on the Kansas State pick. I want to pull up their profile here. I know that what they did at the top there, winning at Baylor, is huge. I know they also beat West Virginia at home. I know they beat Oklahoma State on the road. Those are three very nice wins. And that is it. I mean,
That's it?
That's it.
Oh,
that
wow.
is
You
their
know,
entire
that's,
profile.
I mean, wow. That's,
It's good,
if
but
that's all they've done.
you have 11 losses here. But it's not like one of these other teams that also has half a dozen wins in that 51 to 100 range. They don't. They don't even have. They have 2 wins from 51 to 150. Titel. They have 3 wins of any note against anybody that has any shot at making the tournament. And yet,
And let's compare that to VCU.
and let's take a look what they've done over the last few weeks. Let's see. That would be a 2-7 in their last 9.
It's like they played the hardest teams in the country. Oh, wait, they played some of the hardest teams in the country.
And they lost to Texas Tech, and they lost to TCU, and they lost to Tennessee. I know the strength of schedule is there. I'm not going to argue about the strength of schedule, the conference strength of schedule at least. Non-conference is 247, but
I will hold my nose while you pick somebody else.
No, hold on. I mean, compared to VCU, I mean, those 3 wins blow VCU away.
well, David, he had put VCU and Kansas State both in this line. Who would you have? Would you have these 4 teams?
I'd have 2 of them. I had Arkansas and Kansas State up here. The other 2 are, oh God, actually I don't like the other 2. One is Michigan State, and the other one is, I don't know what Syracuse's RPI is going to end up being, but I think we should make a rule that the minimum RPI is 1 better than that.
So the minimum RPI would be 73, which
Yes.
means Marquette and Kansas State barely made the cut.
Yeah, but Syracuse didn't. But this is where I would have Syracuse.
You would have Michigan State and Syracuse here over teams like VCU and Marquette.
Yeah, and I'm not proud of it.
Uh,
Syracuse is such a home court here.
Stalika, what would you be doing here?
I would actually agree that Michigan Agricultural College should be up here in place of Kansas State. So I really don't have any issues with Marquette, Arkansas, or VCU being up there.
Okay. Well, Matt, let me get your thoughts then.
I would call it a team that John has most of the year that I think picked up a huge win last night, and that would be the Pirates of Seton Hall.
You would actually go Seton Hall this high, even.
Yes, I would have them as. I had them as my last, or I had them as a 10. Actually, I had Q's here too, but I don't mind. I had VCU 41, so having them on the 10 line is not a bad thing. But I would have Seton Hall instead of Kansas State.
I am going to veto Kansas State. If you guys put them in on the 11 line, I'll leave them in. I'm not certain they belong in the field, but I'm going to veto them once at least. And I kind of like the argument on Michigan State a little bit better than the argument on Seton Hall. Matt. So let's go with Michigan State up here on this line. Disappointed that nobody tried to argue Middle Tennessee here, especially you, David.
Oh, they're coming. They're coming.
But I did veto Kansas State on down. I think that you need that extra body of wins and that 51 to 150 wins. Just instead of building out your resume with a bunch of wins over Presbyterian and I don't know, Walla Walla University. Hampton. But
yeah, I mean, you need wins like at Oklahoma State and at places like that.
You won 3 games.
Baylor.
You won 3 games all season. That's what you did. Let me compare them. Let me.
3 huge games.
You won 3 huge games, but let's compare that to a team like Syracuse, who right now, who David, you don't want in. Look at that. They beat
No, I'm saying I don't want them
They beat
in.
Florida State. They beat Virginia. They beat Duke. They beat Pitt. Look what they did.
My reasons for not wanting Syracuse in aren't because I don't think they deserve it. My reasons is because I don't like them and I'm tired of them. I don't know what it is about that part of the state of New York. In the 90s, we had the Bills, and now we have Syracuse.
Poor St. Bonaventure.
Yeah.
David, why don't you give me your 11 line so I can veto the entirety of it?
You might. Kansas State is on top of it. Then that Syracuse team who deserves it, but that I don't like. Then the Middle Tennessee team that deserves it, and that I do like. And then another under the radar. And if you read my brilliant write-up from the other day, which is the best thing I've posted since probably the last time I posted something, I have Texas Arlington all the way up here.
I got to tell you, I love that Texas Arlington pick, David. Now, you guys may be able to talk me into vetoing them down a line. And let me pull up this profile, though, because we've been talking a lot of UNC Wilmington all year, and I kind of agree with you that I like this profile better than Wilmington's right now.
Wilmington had a nice win tonight, but
they beat Towson at home, so when they should have had.
Right.
But Titel, here is that Arlington profile. Do you think this is an at-large profile right now? Of at least something that's an 11 seed type of profile?
If you keep it at the top part of the screen, yes. If you scroll down, you'll see why they don't.
Yeah, they had a couple little hiccups.
Yeah.
Losing by 22 to Troy is not a little hiccup.
Well, Troy's tough at home. I think they're 8-3 at home.
But winning by 14 at St. Mary's makes up for that, doesn't it?
I don't know. Does beating West Virginia and Baylor for Kansas State? Oh, no, it doesn't. Let's put them down to the list.
All right. Well, what do you think about David's line, though? Who do you think I should be knocking down here, and who should I be putting up here?
I like the 2 power schools. I think that Middle Tennessee can have an argument made for it here. Arlington is a solid mid-major team. I don't think they're 11 seed material right now. If they win out, I think they deserve some serious consideration. A win over St. Mary's, regardless of home or away, early in the season or late, is a fantastic win. But I think you can argue for a team like Cal here, even though they lost to the Ducks at home, it was this close.
Can we, and again, I know we got to keep it moving, but can we spend about 2 or 3 minutes, if that, talking about this premise? And I realize that I'm in the minority. I think beating non-tournament teams on the road who collectively win 70 or 80% of their home games is at least as impressive as beating top 50 RPI teams at home that lose more than 50% of their road games. And if you look at Arlington, they've done that. Georgia Southern and Georgia State, not tournament teams, not even close. But to go to both places and win when those teams play as well at home as they do, I think that that's something. Thoughts, please.
It is something, but if you look at the strength of schedule for Cal versus Arlington, one is a 33, one is 129. If they switch schedules, I feel pretty confident that Cal would still do better than Arlington. An argument can be made. I just think that the only reason Cal has not been as quote-unquote successful as Arlington is because their schedule is quote-unquote a hell of a lot harder than Arlington's.
Well, I'm trying to get that Cal profile up here so we can look at it. And Titel, my problem is not the strength of schedule with Cal. It is one
What's the
top
problem?
50 win. One top 50 win.
By a single point. I get it. It's not an impressive top-heavy schedule, but look at all the losses to these top 10, if not top 20 teams. Like, at single digits, Virginia by 4, Arizona by 5, Arizona again by 5. They almost owned us. Oregon by 3 at the buzzer. Like, I understand a loss is a loss, but those are good losses.
The good losses, but do you put a team in for losing games? You got to put a team in for winning games, don't you?
Yes, that's why I had Kansas State higher. How did that go for me?
Okay, well, they ended up
Let
at
it
the top
go,
of the
Josh.
line instead of the bottom of the 10. Come on. It was one spot on the C list. Salika, let me get your thoughts on this line that we're arguing here. Should Cal, Seton Hall, somebody else be in here above one of David's crazy under the radar teams?
As you can probably tell, my computer had a nervous breakdown. Oh, that's much better after hearing some of those teams mentioned. I think this is a time where I start to consider do we consider a Wake Forest or a Providence, for example? I mean, this is where Chad likes to talk about his unholy trinity of Boston College, St. John's, and DePaul. I mean, I think I can be convinced to add the Friars along with Seton Hall, but I can agree with Kansas State and Syracuse up here.
All right, so you would actually would you go Seton Hall here though?
Yes, I would.
Okay, and Matt, you kind of would like Seton Hall up here as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and if we're mentioning Cal compared to Seton Hall, what happened when they played each other on a neutral court?
The Hall won.
I think he just sold me. David, Arlington is getting vetoed down. Seton Hall is going to get this last.
We need to make a rule that you're not allowed to veto me. Then
Uh,
we get the bracket.
I'm also going to go ahead and veto Syracuse and replace them with Syracuse. And I'm going to veto Kansas State and replace them with
Yeah.
just for the sake of veto. Okay. No, but we have 3 spots left. And let's go ahead and let me start with you, Stalika. Why don't you give me, let's say 2 teams this time instead of 4. Give me your next 2 teams up here.
Well, this is where I would add Providence right here because they've been on a roll lately, including a win at Creighton and wins against Xavier and Butler at home. And given where they are right now, this is where I'm going to add the Angry Birds from Illinois State.
And Illinois State.
Where's Michigan? Are they in?
Michigan was in on the 9 line, David, way up there.
I thought they were.
Matt, let's talk a little Providence here. This is among all these garbage teams we're talking about. This is actually a team that's winning games right now.
Yes, and this is actually just about where I have Providence. I have them in my field. I actually have both these 2 teams right here, John. So I'm in 100% agreement with you that. But yeah, Providence, that huge win yesterday at Creighton, and I think that really made me take another look at them and say, okay, I thought, okay, maybe it's a little trend. The schedule was breaking for them. Now, all of a sudden, winning at Creighton, this is a tournament team.
Yeah, we're having a little bit of feedback from somebody here. Okay, I think we got that resolved. But all right, well, we're going to try to work again that resolved here. And let's go ahead and all right, and we got our audio problems worked out here, but we had just pulled up here this profile on this Providence team. But Titel, what are your thoughts? Does Providence belong in?
They certainly deserve credit for beating Butler, Xavier, Creighton back to back to back. I get that, as well as Marquette, even though it was by a point. However, I think that this is one of those things where, like I said, Creighton and Xavier should not get penalized because they're not 100% healthy. Consequently, Providence should not be rewarded 100%. They should get some reward, but not so much reward for beating unhealthy teams by single digits. And Xavier by 12.
Matt, do you have a response to that?
Hasn't it normally basically gone the opposite where you generally don't take into account the team because they can't really control who's playing and who's not on the other opposing team, where sometimes you might dig the team with the injury for not proving they're as good. But even with that, I don't see profiles better than Providence. I mean, when I was doing this earlier, I looked, my first 4 out were TCU, Vandy, Cal, and Georgia Tech.
Vandy made my field.
God, I'm going to be sick here. But let's go ahead. Actually, David, I didn't get your thoughts on whether Providence and Illinois State should be these 2 teams.
Providence is, mine is a little different.
I just need 2 teams.
Yeah. Well, okay. Providence, my 2 teams would be Vanderbilt and Providence. Illinois State would be my first team out, but if you need 2 teams, it would be Vandy and Providence.
All right. Well, I think I am going to be sick because I didn't even think I'd be pulling up Vanderbilt's profile tonight.
Well, look at it.
Because here we are with a 15-13 team. John T., do we need to, figure out what David is smoking, drinking, and maybe something else to even discuss Vanderbilt?
No, I've given up on that. However, the number I'm looking at is the number 1 for non-conference strength of schedule. I remember looking at the schedule prior to the season starting and thinking, wow, that's pretty impressive. I didn't realize it was the hardest in the entire nation. And again, It sucked to lose to Bucknell, but only by 3. It sucked to lose to Alabama, but only by 3. And those are the bad teams. Minnesota by 4, Kentucky by 6, Arkansas 1. Like, again, a loss is a loss, but they have gone up against a very difficult schedule. And a Florida win is fantastic on the road, albeit only by 2 points. I think this team has to be under consideration.
And yeah, I mean, they won at Arkansas. They beat Iowa State, who's suddenly playing well at home. I mean, compared to the rest of the bubble, and they're really hot right now.
With one exception. February 11th.
Well, there is
20 points less at Missouri. Come on.
Scroll up a little bit so I can. I just want to. Can you scroll up? Oh, there we go. Okay, now look how good that looks. Yeah, there is one. When they lose to bad teams, they don't mess around. But they barely made my field, and I guess it's because of their road wins. They have 3 games left. I think they need 2 of the 3, and Kentucky and Florida will not be easy to beat. But if they beat Mississippi State, get one of those 2, and then win a game in the SEC tournament, I think they're going to go in.
Well, let's go through each of you here. I'm going to leave Providence and Illinois State as they are. We have 1 spot left. The teams we've discussed are Cal, Wake, Arlington, Vanderbilt. Why don't I run through each of you and give me who you think the last team should be, and it doesn't have to be somebody on that list. It could be somebody else as well. But Titel, let me start with you.
I will go West Coast bias and vote for Cal, but it's with my nose held very tightly.
All right, Stalika.
I can concur with Cal because in addition to the USC wins, I think wins against Princeton, UC Irvine, as crazy as it sounds, may be wins they're going to be banking on. I'm not sure I can bank on Stanford and Utah, though.
Matt?
I had Wake as my last team in, just ahead of TCU.
You would have had Wake in. And David, who would you have? Your team would have been Vanderbilt?
No, my team would be Arlington if you're looking for one team. I have them just at.
If I put Arlington in, I'm going to need another team from you, David.
Then it would be Vanderbilt.
Okay. I'm going to go with the majority here. It's the Cal Bears, so we're going to give our final spot to.
This is a horrible pick.
I'm not crazy about it by any means. I'm going to go ahead and fill out that line there. I'll put Arlington in along with UNC Wilmington and Monmouth to finish out that 12 line.
We took Providence. Okay.
Wake,
Providence was my last team.
Wake and Vanderbilt are the 2 teams we discussed that did not go in. But I want to run through each of you a few teams that you think just missed it. Matt, you mentioned TCU already, but let's discuss any other teams that may be right there. Anyone else besides that, Matt? Let me start with you.
Yeah. For not attending friend, Mr. Fortson, I do have Georgia Tech in my last 4 out, and this, I guess, would be my last 4 of these 4 teams.
Right. Titel, is there anyone else that you're looking at as being close who we did not put in?
I mean, you can throw out a name like Clemson or Tennessee, but nothing I feel very strongly about, I assure you.
David, how about you?
Let's see. Monmouth, I like them a lot.
Well, Monmouth is kind of in because they're in as an auto bid. So.
Right, yeah, but I kind of like them a little. I like them at least bubble-ish. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that they're in, but I emphasize that to say that I kind of like them close to the bubble. Outside of those 4, it really gets just. I don't even want to. It's too depressing.
How about you, Stalika?
I think Wake Forest is Xavier's doppelganger in the ACC. I mean, their MVP may well be their schedule makers because they set up some pretty nice non-conference schedules, but neither team really has too many signature wins to show for that. I mean, Wake Forest, for example, their best wins are Georgia Tech, Miami, Pittsburgh, and a sweep of NC State. They're going to need a little more than that if they want to go dancing.
I want to throw a couple of teams out there. First of all, until they lost tonight, I would have made an argument that Alabama belongs in this group just because they hadn't been losing. But they lose at home to Georgia. I think they're kind of done for the time being at least. Rhode Island, I hate to do it, but they're kind of sneaking back in there. When everyone else loses, you kind of move up a step every day. And I want to throw one other name out there that we haven't discussed in a long time. But how about the Illini after Northwestern?
Stop. Oh,
I just want to argue. I'm not saying that they're there yet. I'm saying there's 6th team out, and this bubble is actually shrinking. But they've now swept Northwestern. They've beaten Michigan. They've beaten VCU. if you're going to argue a 12-loss Vanderbilt team, don't you have to argue a 12-loss Illinois team with, again, no real bad losses?
They beat Michigan at home, which everyone has done that matters.
Okay. They swept Northwestern.
Yeah.
They beat VCU. They beat BYU. You were talking about beating BYU earlier, weren't you, David?
At BYU.
It was a neutral court, at least.
Yeah. Who was it? I mean, I was saying that as trying to make a case for St. Mary's. They beat a team on a neutral court that St. Mary's beat.
So it only matters when it's in your favor, not against it.
No, I mean, do you really?
I'm just throwing it out there. The team, Salika, you had a comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we're looking for teams with gaudy records, can we at least take Rhode Island out and put Houston in? At least the Cougars beat Vermont on a neutral floor, swept UConn, which actually does look relevant right now. And by
Second
the way,
thought, leave Illinois up.
No, wait, let me finish. Houston beat Rhode Island back in December.
Well, let me throw a team that Jerry Palm thinks is a tournament team right now. What about Ole Miss?
Huh?
Anyone?
Is Marshall Henderson eligible again?
Anyone? Okay,
Yeah.
crickets.
I think Jerry and the puppet have been hanging together.
Let me go ahead and reveal for everybody here the 13 through the 16 lines. We see teams like Nevada and Valpo up there. But that is our complete 1 through 68, along with some of our top teams out. Let me run through each of you. Any other final thoughts about the field or anything in general? And Matt, let me start with you.
I will say, I think this week's award for bid collusion will go to the Big East, with Providence winning at Creighton, Seton Hall beating Xavier, Marquette now beating Xavier. All of a sudden, last week we were thinking maybe that's going to be a 4-bid league. We have 7 in, and I think there's a decent chance all 7 can be in the final field.
And don't forget Syracuse beating Duke. Salika, your thoughts?
Oh.
Is Pitt also going to be part of the same collusion as well? Because they seem to have gone quietly on their own little tear.
Yeah, quietly they're on the tail in the wrong direction. Titel, any other thoughts for the evening?
I got to share my experience last night. Went to the Georgetown DePaul game because my friend had a free ticket. Georgetown's up 27-13 midway through the first half, so I decided it's time to get some nachos. I come back and they're trailing at halftime. Back and forth in the second half, tie game at the end. DePaul comes down, gets fouled with 0.2 seconds left to win over Georgetown on the road. DePaul, on the plus side, my friend did a raffle and gave to me his winning prize, a limited edition Hall of Fame bobblehead of Mr. Allen Iverson.
Ooh, the answer.
Hey.
AI right there. David,
Next Georgetown coach?
Oh, no. David, your thoughts?
This is actually, when I put my seed list together, I was like, oh, this one's going to be pretty far off from everybody else's, but miraculously it seemed to be pretty close. One of the things I do like Texas Arlington and even UNC Wilmington more than some of the teams we took. I mean, particularly Cal. I just don't think Cal is that strong of a road team. And I think I don't know if the real committee will do it or not. They probably won't. But I think that you really need to look at some of those under the radar teams because they're probably better than what you realize and probably what we even gave them credit for. Just my opinion. Read my brilliant write-up if you want more on that.
And obviously the one problem with those teams is that when you're talking about a team like Cal, they could, they're probably going to get eliminated in their conference tournament by losing to Oregon or you losing to Arizona. Right. When you talk about UNC Wilmington, if they're going to get eliminated, they may lose to a Towson or a William and Mary. So you're going to get a much worse loss if you do lose. And I think that the best argument for them is that maybe they belong above that bubble line on the 11 seed line if they win out, including winning the conference tournament. But those losses hurt them so much more than the power conference teams. But yeah. I guess on that note, on behalf of, let's see what we got over here. We got Matt Zukowski and John Titel to my sides now, and Stalika and Griggs below me. I don't know how we flipped guys around here during the show, but we somehow did it. But I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we'll be back starting Sunday night with our Championship Week video notebooks. We'll have a Hoops HD report coming up on Monday. We'll have more bracket rundowns coming up. And don't forget to send us those Twitters and those emails for our mailbag. We're going to keep going with that all the rest of the season. But thanks for joining us and have a great night.